Welcome to the Accidental Experts podcast. I'm your host, Bryce Hamilton. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and a child and family therapist. I have been in practice for over 15 years, and I'm also a mom of 4. So I know the challenges both professionally and personally. I'm so glad that you're here today to grow your parenting toolbox. Please come as you are and be ready to learn. My goal is to make you the accidental expert so that you can raise healthy humans. Hi, everyone. Welcome back. I'm so glad you're with us today. So we're going to be talking about a special topic to my heart, which is mother-daughter relationships. And today we're going to be focusing on the teen years and those mother-daughter relationships. And we have a special guest. Her name is Erica Thomas. She is a licensed psychotherapist with over 20 years of experience. She is also an expert in mother-daughter relationships. She founded Vita Nova Counseling and Vita Nova Mother-Daughter Coaching to help towards healing mother-daughter relationships with hope and meaningful connection. In addition to her clinical work, Erica serves as a consultant, mentor, and trainer, supporting mental health professionals worldwide in understanding and addressing mother-daughter dynamics and their own practices. With that, let's get to Erica.
Thank you so much, Bryce. I'm really excited to be here today.
You know, to be honest, when I was in school, we all know that there's a dynamic between mothers and daughters, but
Right.
in terms of like training, when I think about like my foundational skills, this was not something that I remember us spending really any time on. So I'm so excited that
Yeah.
we have people who are focusing on this and who can educate us to help us do this part of life, especially with people we love so much better.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree. When I was in grad school, we did the fundamentals and we, deep dive into family therapy. And some of those dynamics I'm able to use with my, in my joint mother-daughter sessions, but it doesn't go too far. So you actually need that specialized training to really understand the dynamic between the mother and the daughter, because it is a very, very unique dynamic.
Yes.
So,
Yes. And I find that,
mhm,
I think throughout the lifetime, mother
yeah,
daughter, there's a dynamic, right? But in the teenage years,
yeah.
there can be extra challenge to that period of life. So, like, why do you think that
Mhm.
happens during the mother daughter relationship, especially when the daughter is in the teenage years? And putting in there that, like, sometimes childhood with that daughter has been so strong between the mother daughter, but then we enter this new stage of life and things seem to like shift. Can you talk to that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's kind of a multi-layered question. So, um, you know, and you're right. I think that number one, I think that in working with teenage girls and their mothers, and sometimes even their fathers, one of the things that I have found out is that parents go into teenage years with their daughters kind of scared, and because they hear a lot of things, in society and from family and friends about what it is to parent a teenager, and enjoy them now, because when they're teenagers, you're either going to be a totally different person, and then you hear all these things like, oh, teenagers, and it's just, I feel that they go in with a misconception really of what a teenager is. So what ends up happening sometimes is they end up playing out those misconceptions.
Mhm.
So I think that that is one layer to it. I think another layer to it is when we're talking about, the mother and the daughter, particularly uh, as a teenager. So really, the mother is the one that sets the stage and the foundation for what it is to be a woman in this world for the daughter. She is her first example. And that seems to heighten during the adolescent years, because that's a time too where it's heightened as to, uh, the teenagers wanting to individuate, wanting to become their own person and find their own identity. So they're trying to grasp knowledge from here and from there, and including mom. Oh, mom does this. She's a woman. Okay, this is how I do things.
Mhm.
So, and in doing that, sometimes what I have found is that the mother-daughter patterns, the dysfunctional patterns in a mother-daughter history that are passed down from mother to daughter. in the line are sometimes inadvertently played out. And what ends up happening is you end up happening you end up having a mother who is very who doesn't know that she's playing out this pattern.
Mhm.
And then the daughter who is trying to individuate and find herself in and really values control in her life is not wanting to be um, not wanting to be boxed in, right?
Mhm.
She's wanting to explore, and mom is saying, "Well, this is how you do it," right? And so it creates this thing, this struggle. And so, but what ends up happening sometimes, again, if moms are not careful, and I've seen both sides. I've seen where I've worked with teen moms. I'm sorry, moms and their teen daughters, but I've also worked with a lot of my work is with adult daughters and their mothers.
Mhm.
And when they talk about a lot of the hurt that they are actually working through is the hurt that happened during the teenage years.
Mm.
So sometimes mom leaned too much a little bit, to daughter because maybe mom was going through some struggles like a divorce, or there was a life transition that went on. And usually this happens with the oldest daughter where, the only other woman in the house or woman closest to her subconsciously, she goes to her daughter and tries to lean on her. And daughter's thinking, this is way too much.
Yeah.
Mom, this is way too much. Or what ends up happening is they end up getting really close. And then daughter over time realizes, wow, she dumped a lot on me. And that really, really hurt me. And it causes a rift as they get older. So yeah, so going into the adolescent years, really the mother really has to think about and be reflective on how am I going to grow up with my daughter here. She's no longer 9, she's no longer 10, right? She's 13. She's and acknowledging that she's in a completely different level of just a level of development that requires for her to be able to meet her daughter where she is, and
Mhm.
and allow her daughter to feel seen and heard by her. So, yeah.
And how do we do that part? Like, how do you have your daughter feel seen and heard? How do parents, or especially moms, do that?
Mhm. Mhm. So I think one of the really, I think the cornerstone of that is approaching it from a place of curiosity
Mhm.
and, just seeking to understand rather than going in and trying to fix it or trying to redirect the behavior right off the bat. Instead, get curious with your daughter because what ends up happening is, and this is what I encourage the mothers of, teenage daughters to do is, sometimes because their brain is still very underdeveloped, particularly the prefrontal cortex. That has all the executive functioning and cognition and all that needs to create and execute good decisions. That's underdeveloped and it's still being developed. So when you approach it by with the curiosity, not only are you able to get a productive conversation with
Mhm.
her, meaning you go in unarmed. You're not going in, you know, armed with a lecture, which sometimes, kids expect that of their parents, especially when they do misstep. They
Mhm.
expect their parents to come in with a lecture. You shouldn't have done this. Why are you doing this again? I told you that this is not the right thing, or in so many words. And so chances are there's a very good reason why daughter did what she did.
Mhm.
And the interesting thing about teenagers is that they go through adolescence in a very, sometimes unbeknownst to them, sometimes unbeknownst to mom, that they go through adolescence in a very intentional way. They're doing things because that's the way it is at that stage. That's what they have to do at that stage. So there's a point where they're wanting to, develop their independence, and they want to, develop a sense of identity so that they can go on
Mhm.
and be productive adults and individuate, right? And be able to be their own person.
Mhm.
So coming from a place of curiosity allows the mom to say, hey, I really want to talk with you. I am not here to fight. I have my swords down. I just want to hear you. And when the daughter really senses that, and it has to be with no MO, like you can't go in saying, feeling like, okay, I'm going to talk with her and explore, and then I'm going to give her a lecture.
Mhm.
You have to go into it with no MO, trying and seeking to understand.
Mhm.
Eventually, you will find out why they did what they did. Maybe it wasn't as productive and maybe as constructive as they should have done it. But you are able to understand why they did what they did. And then the mom can go on the back end and work with them, right? To
Mhm.
figure out, okay, this is how this is how maybe it might be more productive for you to act in this way, right? If your feelings are getting hurt, you just don't lash out at people, right? So it's just a thing where then moms become, the daughters become more open to those types of conversation.
Mhm. Yeah, because when you're really being heard, then you feel
Yeah,
like sharing more, right? When somebody is actually listening, but like they're listening to hear, not listening to respond, right? Like they're just
absolutely.
hearing what you have to say and then formulating a thought and responding, and then you're responding, right? Like it's like that natural part of conversation. I mean, and it's
Yeah.
so easy to come in like armed, like, oh my gosh, seriously again? Or like, why are you doing this? Or, that's not allowed, or whatever it is, right?
Hmm.
Like they're
Hmm.
they're going to have some reason that they're doing something. I find, I mean, like even I have reasons why I do things. Like if
Right.
my partner's like, why did you do blah blah blah, it's like, well, this, and it may make sense to them or it might not. And
Right.
so, but it made sense to me at the time. It doesn't mean that like maybe right now I feel like it makes sense, but at the time it seemed like the best choice. And like remembering that we're all going through that, but especially when they are, you know, still developing their executive functioning skills and being able to like have
Hmm.
foresight into like what would happen if you do X, then Y could happen and that could be bad, and right, or that might not go well. They're just thinking and then responding. Um,
Exactly. Go ahead. Yeah.
yeah.
No, yeah, I agree. I feel that, the teenage brain is not fully integrated. All the neural pathways are not fully developed. As a matter of fact, adolescence spans from the years from 12 to 24. So what I like to think about teenage years is like adolescence 1.0. This is the foundation of what they're learning to be an adult.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2.0 comes around 18 to 24, where they start to see the world a lot more sophisticated than what they did. So they're
Mm-hmm.
building upon their growth of the teenage years, and with the goal of what am I going to do for the rest of my life, and where am I going?
Mm-hmm.
So becomes much more that. But um, one thing I did forget to mention is, one of the ways to also, what I tell my moms when, working with them and their teen daughters is meet emotion with emotion. So oftentimes we meet our teen daughters' emotions with logic.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and the way meeting emotion would look like would be daughter, is goes off. She's in a very emotional state. And we come in trying to fix it. Well, why don't you do this? Why don't you do that? Or they get annoyed with them and it starts to create a conflict. So really the thing to do is recognize that their brain biologically is not able to accept the logical part because that prefrontal cortex is totally offline.
Mm-hmm.
That really what's going right now is their threat response system. So we have to meet them where they are. So validating feelings, giving them space, and trying to see where they're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
um, how can I support you right now? I know you're really angry right now. What can I do
Yeah.
to help right now?
Mm-hmm.
So doing that, allowing their brains to calm down, because eventually they will, then their prefrontal cortex goes back online, and now you can have these productive conversations with them
Mm-hmm.
around the logical side.
Yeah. Well, and it feels so, even as like an adult, like having somebody come to you
Mhm.
and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so upset about this thing that happened, blah, blah, blah. And they're just like, just do this. It's like, you feel so dismissed. Like, why? Like, I'm I'm upset. Like, and I'm allowed to be upset. And we're allowed to have feelings. So, like, allowing
Mhm.
space for that. And then when, because feelings are fleeting, right? They only last for a period of time. And so,
Right.
allowing those feelings to happen and then being like, okay, do you feel ready to do something about this? Like, I know you're really upset earlier. Would you like to talk? Or do you have any ideas about how you're going to solve that problem? And having a little bit of time. Like when we feel dismissed, it only amplifies my feeling. Like, oh, I have to get my feeling bigger so that you can notice it. Right. And that's
You're
exactly
right. Yeah.
what happened. Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. I think that, one of the things that I tell, one of the things, the beauty behind meeting emotion with emotion is that you're also giving your daughters a platform to be okay with their feelings. You're
Mm-hmm.
saying, you know what, it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. Because really, in actuality, feelings are not right or wrong.
Mm-hmm.
They're more information than anything.
Mm-hmm.
So, but that is an important part of resiliency building for them to be able to have those emotions. They're not, you're right. And like emotions are fleeting. They're not going to stay in that anger state for, you know, a long time. It'll eventually dissipate.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that is an important part that parents, I think, and they do from a loving place. It's not like they do it from a well-meaning place because they've had all this life experience and they're just trying to shorten the learning curve for their kids,
Yeah.
and they don't want their kids to suffer. So it comes from a meaningful place.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really, and not that there's no room for that, but it's just recognizing the timing as to when you can impart that wisdom with them.
Yeah, that reminds me of something. I don't remember what the
Yeah.
circumstance was, but when I was a teenager, my mom
Yeah.
was saying something to me and I was like, I just want to make my own mistakes. Right. Like, and so obviously I was still in my emotions and not ready
Yeah.
to hear logic at that time. But I remember saying that, and my mom was okay, like, okay, right? And she was able to kind
Mhm.
of like walk away. And I almost feel like that helped me to listen even better. Like it was like weird that by her accepting even my like irrational response to her trying to help me, and I was
Mhm.
feelings like it, I was like, oh, that was maybe a little intense. Like I don't really want to make that many mistakes, but I just like don't want somebody, I don't want to feel controlled. So I want to be able to make
Mhm.
choices. And so I think the collaborative approach that you're suggesting is so wise, especially in that mother-daughter relationship.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. It's it is, it is important to be able to recognize too that there is an age appropriate um freedom, if you will, or um space that we need to give our daughters to be
Mhm.
able to now, within reason. We don't want them to expose themselves to safety issues, imminent safety issues. But if there's a situation where they might make a mistake because and it's within safety, maybe they'll it, sometimes it's okay to allow them to do that,
Mhm.
because sometimes that's how we learn.
Yeah.
And you know so it, it's a I call it the beauty of natural consequences. We
Yeah.
we
Which are
learn.
hard, right? Because I mean, you don't
They're
get
hard.
natural consequences just happen when they do, right? So if you're
Yeah,
thinking like my daughter should really get out there and practice basketball because she wants to like get a college scholarship and she's not spending time and she's
exactly.
messing around doing other things, and like that could be a really big life lesson. But if you're the person trying to push them to do that, they're probably not going to be very accepting towards that part. And then the natural consequence is she may not get as much playing time, and hopefully it's in a stage where she could recover it, right? That she could improve on that part, or like maybe not studying as much as they should, or there's lots of just examples. And then there's a natural consequence, and it's sometimes that's such, I find that natural consequences teach us better than imposed consequences, right? Like as a parent, I'm mad at you, so you're going to do this thing. And like sometimes you can create kind of like natural consequences within that, and you don't have to just wait for times where the actual natural consequence happens. But I think it's hard to wait. Like we want some response to control their behavior. We want there to be something that happens, and it's hard. But don't you find that like when you realize that you made a mistake and you make a different choice, that goes so much better? Like you're more likely to stick to it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I have found that, as a young teenage girl to all the way now,
Yes.
where it's like, okay, noted. I know not to do that again.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That was not the right thing to do. Uh,
Yeah.
so, but, it allows me to also more organically um, be more accountable for my actions. And
Mm-hmm.
that is actually a great conversation to have too, when, we're able to, just have that conversation with our teen daughters around accountability.
Mm-hmm.
And, what part did you play in this, right?
Yes.
So, you are really angry at your friend because she, just totally ignored you. So now you want to go tell her, why you're so upset with her and everything. And although okay, I'm not sure that's going to go well, right? But
Mm-hmm.
you just say, you just kind of rationalize, just kind of talk with her with that, like what makes you feel like this is a good solution,
Mm-hmm.
and just allow her to talk through it. Um, and if it's something that, she's going to go about in a safe way, of course, then allow her to do it, even though you're going to be like, oh my gosh, it's going to be a train wreck.
Mm-hmm.
You can see it from 20 miles away, but she's going to come back and she's going to say, okay, that didn't work.
Yeah.
She's even more mad at me. Now she no longer wants to be my friend, and so they're able to then have a little bit more productive of conversation around accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's so hard. Okay. So when we're
Yes.
thinking about like the teenage years, and there's, you know, I think the things that teenage moms report, especially about their daughters, that are like frustrating to them, or like the pushback, the mood
Mhm.
swings, the like intensity of their emotion. What do we need to know about the like adolescent space about why those things happen? Like is there rational things going on behind the scenes? Is the brain doing something terrible? Is their kid
Yeah.
just a jerk now, or is it like, a stage of development? Like help us to understand that
Right.
piece.
So I guess the first and foremost question is what we need to ask ourselves as parents is, what are they trying to communicate here?
Mm,
Because behavior is a form of communication, and they may not tell us outright, but then they act out in a certain way, and they're trying to tell us something. So I think immediately just getting curious with that and just asking, what are they trying to tell me, right? Even you can ask your child that, your teen daughter that, I see you are lashing out at me. You are, one day you're good with me, and or you're good with your friends, and then we can't, you're yelling at me all the time. What's that about? I'd love to understand that.
mm-hmm,
So coming from a place of curiosity, I think it's also too a combination of practicing common sense vigilance, right? A common sense and vigilance as a parent for safety, and also understanding the developmental stages of adolescence. So, um, you know, a lot of parents attribute to mood swings and shifts in their behavior and how they act on hormones.
mm-hmm.
So Actually, there's been a lot of science that has shown that hormones actually have very little to do with it. Do they have some influence? Absolutely, especially like girls who are, are PMSing, and they're going to be edgy a little bit. So it's okay to recognize that, but also understanding that you're right. Their brain is on fire. Their neurons right now, their nerve cells right now are replicating tenfold. Not only that, but on top of that, they're also pruning the excess of neurons that they no longer need. So the brain is just kind of all over the place. It's a construction zone, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, and so over time, it'll build itself up, and then the brain realizes, oh no, that's not what I want. So it prunes it, and then it goes back, and then it redevelops. So it is a constant construction zone. So I think if you can think about it in that way, you're going to have some buildup, but you're also going to have some mess that is left.
Mm-hmm.
So, but even just understanding that part, I think is really important. Um, how you address their, recognizing too, is this really a mental health disorder that is absolutely worthy and important for parents to be vigilant of?
Mm-hmm.
If it's just, she's if it's something that's really just getting in the way of her daily functioning, maybe it's really altering her thought process, her behavior. She's was an A student, now she's barely passing her classes.
Mm-hmm.
She used to like to get up to go to school, and now she barely wants to do that. She used to like to hang out with friends. Now she just wants to stay in her room. So sometimes we have to assess as to what is good and what is appropriate, and what maybe there may be a problem. So if you have a doubt, I would say always seek a therapist and professional help, because it may just be she's just going through just a little phase, and that's okay. um, in that, what you're doing is you're also teaching that it's okay to ask for help when you're having a hard time.
Yep.
But and maybe there's something that trained professionals are, this is what they learn. They go through years of training to really figure out and discern whether it's just just an off day, or if it's something deeper. So don't be afraid to ask for
Yeah.
professional help, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Mhm.
mean, a therapist or your pediatrician, right? Like sometimes just putting a call in
Exactly.
to say like, hey, this is happening. Is this in the realm of expected, right? Like, is this
Absolutely.
developmentally appropriate? And I think, one of the things that
Mhm.
it can be really hard for parents too is um, ultimately, I mean, I don't know about you, but ideally, I would not have my 35-year-old living in my basement, right? Like, I want my kids to leave the nest at some point,
Of
right?
course.
To,
Yeah. Yeah.
and to grow into their own life. And so I think, in doing that, they have to separate from us. They have to kind of push away a little bit. And that can be painful of that, like flying, like leaving the nest per se, right? Like that part of like separating themselves from us. And like, when we're young, our family is so important. And then as
Yes.
we develop, our friends become more important, and we want to spend more time with our friends. And that's totally developmentally normal, right? And so then when they
Yes.
can't be with their friends, and they feel like you're killing them, right? Like, you want me to spend time with them? No, I have to spend time with my friends. And it's that we can honor both, right? Like, both can be true at the same time. And
Absolutely.
I think that family can stay important, and friends can also be important. Both of those things, we can hold space for both of that. And I think, my advice to parents is always like, the earlier we're having conversations with our kids, the better it
Mhm.
seems to go, right? Instead of having to have
Yes.
a reactive conversation, we have a proactive conversation of like, my 9-year-old daughter and I have started talking about like, like, as you become a teenager, right? Or you get into this adolescent stage, like, and I guess she's almost 9. We're almost there. I'm giving her a little like 1 month extra. Anyway, so I'm talking to her about like, friends are going to become really important, and they're going to be, who you want to spend the most time with, and that's so normal. And in our family, we also think that you're really important. And so we want you
Mm,
around and we want to be around with
mhm.
you. And so just kind of like, even just those like little nuggets of a conversation where this is going to be something totally normal to happen. And we would also like this to continue happening. I think helps. I'm trying it out because she's my oldest girl, and my
Yeah.
son, he's fine. He wants to still hang out and like have friends, but but
Yeah.
my daughters are very social. And so like making sure that we still get time with them, but then also I want them to leave at some point and spread their wings and of course come back. And like, so I think it's like that part of like the push and pull of like just having that awareness that like this is developmentally and normal for your kid to push you away a little bit, right? To like ask their friends
Mhm.
for answers to questions instead of you, and to not take it personally.
Absolutely.
Really, I think that's like the thing that I've learned in this parenting journey, like personally the most, is that
Mm,
I don't take it personally, right? It's really not mostly about me. It's
yes.
about what they're going through that moment or what they thought was best, or it really has. I mean, sometimes it does have to do with me, but most of it I try not to take personally, right? It's because
Right.
it's just what
Right.
they're going through at that time or what they thought was best. Do you find that that's true too?
Absolutely. No, yeah, and I think you hit it right on the nail, when you talk about, it's really, we cannot take it personally. It is something that is a normal process that they're supposed to go through,
Mm-hmm.
and it is their way of figuring out who their tribe is gonna be
Yeah.
past the nest, and if we impede that, it's going to then really just affect them. It's not gonna teach them how to become their own person. It's not going to it's not going to show them how to be their own person. And that you're right, and that there's room for both. You can love your family but
Mm-hmm.
prefer to hang out with your friends. And I know when I worked with teenagers, there's always a sense of gratitude for what their parents have given them.
Mm-hmm.
And I always make it a point to really either encourage a teen to tell them, uh, and I also like to tell the parents, I just want to let you know she's just really grateful for you guys, and um, and I know maybe sometimes you don't see this, but I do want you to know that, because I think parents do sometimes need to know if they're on the right track.
Mm-hmm.
So, because parenting is hard. I mean, nobody tells you how to do this stuff. There's a whole bunch of books, but when you're in the middle of it, you're 11 o'clock and you're having 11 p.m. and you're having a kid that is screaming and not. What do you do?
Yeah.
And everything feels so big. So a lot of it is trial and error.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but yeah, I think that is really great. Also, too, um, when moms take it personal, one thing that I do really, just I try to really work with moms on figuring out their mother daughter history and what patterns they are transferring from mother to daughter, which ones have been passed down from mother to daughter. Because if, for instance, let's just say, um, your mom and dad want to go out on, have set up a date night like a month in advance, and the daughter says, "Hey, Jill invited me to spend the night at her house. I really want to go." And then mom says, "Well, I need for you to babysit your little brother.
Mm-hmm.
Dad and I have scheduled this about a month in advance, and no, you're going to stay here." So, so although there's some elements of, yes, it's important to support each other as a family, is there something more that you are imparting in her that maybe might not be healthy? Um, so, so it's just something that, just to get curious about. And these are, when I work with moms, we go over some of these patterns
Mm-hmm.
specifically. And because there are certain patterns in the mother daughter relationship and they show up in all sorts of different ways depending on where you come from, your culture, your values. But, you know, brass tacks, that pattern is the same.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's
So,
funny that you say that because I was thinking about like my mom was like Martha Stewart. She has passed away, but she was like
yeah.
literally the hostess with the mostest, right? Like she just like
Mm,
did tons of that. And I like to host people, but not in the same way. And I realized I was like going above and beyond. I was like, why am I exerting myself so intensely? And I was like, oh, I like this was my mom. Like this is how she showed love to people. And so like I wanted to do that. And so like thinking about the things we're doing and then we can change them. Like when we recognize why they're happening,
absolutely.
right? And we're like, oh, actually, that doesn't really make sense for me. And the funny part is, I remember as a teenager, my mom would, I mean, she would make the most amazing tablescapes. Like you'd sit at Christmas
Mm,
dinner or Thanksgiving or Valentine's or
yeah.
whatever. And it was like the most beautiful table. Like you're just like, oh my gosh, right? And I would always, like, she would be up late the night ahead for that,
Mm,
preparing for that. And I'd be like, why are you doing this? Like, you don't need to do this. Like, just, I mean, nothing would be fine. But if you really want to do something, you can just do it little. And she'd be like, no, no, like this is how it has to be or whatever. And I remember thinking like, oh, that's too much and saying something to her. And then I ended up like finding myself doing some of the things where it was like I was killing myself over something. And then I'm like, wait, hold on. I don't even want to do this. And so it's funny how those patterns like you're talking about, even if I didn't like them, as a teenager,
yes.
like that was modeled for me. And then it wasn't until it got to my awareness that I was doing that I was like, oh, actually, I don't want to do that anymore. But there's so much I think that we often don't have that
Mhm.
awareness to.
Absolutely. I think, like I said, we as women, as moms, we set the foundation for our daughter and how it is to exist as a woman. I
Mhm.
think about the movie, one of the movies I love, and it just emulates the patterns of mother-daughter, just the patterns around a mother-daughter history, and just the mother-daughter relationship is Bad Moms. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie, but so I can't remember the name of the characters, but one of them is a very well-to-do woman, very well put together, and every Christmas and she's like the Martha Stewart, like your mom was, and she makes everything just lovely and just immaculate. And then her daughter is the opposite. She, is very practical, and she sees the beauty in the simple things, and for her less is more.
Mhm.
And then mom comes in and visits, and she looks at the house, and she's like, basically like, do you love your family? Because this is crap, right?
Mhm.
So she goes in and she tries to fix everything her way. And so there she's imparting a value on her daughter that for her daughter, it just does not make sense. It's
Mhm.
never made sense. And
Mhm.
as a matter of fact, she did everything she could to make sure that she did not repeat that because it was stressful, and she saw how tough it was for mom. And but
Mhm.
mom, in the end, she's like, basically like, as women, this is what we do. We sacrifice ourselves.
Mhm.
And, this is our duty to sacrifice ourselves. And so just the messages that are, imparted from mother to daughter,
Mhm.
we just have to be really mindful of ourselves in, in that, in
Yeah.
raising our girls.
Yeah.
Mhm.
It's a lot. And nobody tells you what parenting is going to be like before
No.
you have kids, right? Like the complexities. They're like, when are you going to have kids? And then, you have this tiny little baby and you're not sleeping and all the things. And I mean, and it's beautiful and also
Yeah.
so challenging. And I think I love that you say there's all these books out there, which is, I so agree. And it's like in the middle of chaos, you are not going to pick up a book. I
No.
mean, you want to, but like you just
Right.
can't. Like it's like, I mean, I love to read. The only way I digest information
Yeah.
is auditorially because I mean, I love having a book and I have my husband would probably say hundreds of books in physical copy that need to be read that I want to read, but it's just like the time, the ability to do that. And so like digesting things in small nuggets is so much easier than having a whole
Absolutely.
thing because and also some of the books don't apply. Like somebody else might feel like this is the best book and then I read it and I'm like, I don't really think it applies to my kids. Like this doesn't,
Mhm.
you know, fit the bill, or like this isn't really the issue that we're dealing with. And so I think it's hard because there isn't a manual that comes with your kids specifically, right? You're having to
No,
figure it out as you go. I'm still kind of
absolutely.
hoping that the placenta becomes a manual, but I don't know who to talk to about that. So, I'm
I,
like, if you have to deliver it, you might as well get the benefit of it being
my
something.
gosh, you're onto something there. Interesting.
Yeah, I'm
So-
still working on that one. I don't know how we turn that into. I mean, it's layered. I mean, I feel like it has all the right foundations. I just don't know how to make it a manual. So we're working.
Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. That would be amazing. Yeah. You would have a
I'll let you
lot
know
of
when I get that
placentas.
together. Yeah, yeah,
A lot of placentas in the cryo
yes, no doubt,
freezers.
no doubt. That could be manuals for our children. I mean,
Right.
really, what a
Right.
missed
Exactly.
opportunity.
Oh my
Okay,
goodness.
so talk to me
Totally.
about. Okay, so I think when I see mother-daughter relationships, I think oftentimes I see a lot of them making common mistakes. Like it's a like where it's like I see the things where it's like, oh, this mother-daughter dynamic is doing this, and this mother-daughter dynamic is doing this, and so I think we can fall into. I like how you said like we kind of get this idea of what teenagehood will be like, or what raising a daughter will be like, or right from society, from other people, from our family, even from them saying like something when we found out we were having a daughter, my dad said to me is like, I hope she's just like you, which meant you were
Oh,
challenging. I don't
yeah.
think I was that challenging. I was, but it's like this balance of like, when I was little and
Absolutely.
having ADHD and navigating through that process of getting your kid
Mm,
diagnosed and getting the skills. And at that time, like all we did was put kids on medication and no skills. And so it was just like,
yeah.
it was wasn't the whole encompassing thing in my perspective. And so I think,
Mm.
yeah, it was challenging, but also, my parents didn't know how to do the things, how to have the conversations as well. And so, but my daughters are turning out, fantastically.
Oh, I
We're
love
working
that.
on
I
it. We're
love
working
that.
on it.
We're working.
But it's
We're all a work in progress.
yes, everybody is. But I think people make these common mistakes in
Yeah.
teenage years. Like, what do you see that parents do, especially that mother-daughter relationships? What are moms doing that maybe is pushing their daughter away, or not facilitating those conversations, or not growing the relationship? Like it gets kind of stalled out maybe.
Right. Right. So, there's so I think an important part um, during when your daughter is an adolescent is make sure that you make it a point to nurture those other parts of you as a woman.
Mm,
Because your daughters are seeing that in us.
mhm,
It's not, like my mom could not, I mean, she could not wait to be a mom, and she was so happy to be a mom. And she went into motherhood, with a lot of intentions to break all the cycles and whatnot. And she broke a lot of them. And my mom was a good mom, and there were some things that were passed on and she didn't know.
mhm,
So, but one of the things is that she really held on to, like, being a mom was a huge thing for her.
mhm,
So when I went into adulthood, I'm like, okay, I know what it's like to be a good mom. I know how to be a good mom, but how do I exist as a woman? I
mm,
don't know what that's like.
mhm,
And so, how do I nurture my hobbies? How do I nurture those friendships and go have those girls' nights?
mhm,
And just for our daughters to be able to see that we're more than just we're more than just moms. And the
mhm,
person to tell me that actually was my dad, and we were so it was when I was a first time mom, and my oldest Zane was 6 weeks old, and it was about that time. Back then, it was 6 weeks, maternity leave. So I had to go back to work, and I was just really nervous and about that. My grandma then asked me because I went over. We were in town and went over to her house, and she says, "So what are you going to do? When what are you gonna go back to work? Are you gonna stay at home? And I told her really proud. I'm like, I'm gonna go back to work. And she's like, oh, um, you know, And then she proceeded to tell me about, this story of a Mexican telenovela, how, this little boy just was raised more so by his nanny because mom was never around, and the nanny basically replaced the mom. Uh,
Mm,
for a first-time mom, that totally freaked me out. So
terrifying.
it
Yes.
was terrifying. Um, so I went back to my parents' house where I was staying, and I told my dad. I was like, because he looked at my face and he's like, kind of like, what's wrong? And I told him, I said, this is what grandma says. And he goes, mija, which in Spanish, it's my daughter. It's a term of endearment. He said, mija. He said, you should know you are more than just a mom. And I hope you always know that.
Mm,
So to this day,
so yeah.
it gave me permission
Mhm,
to be continue being proud that I was a working mom. I was a working professional, and I could do both.
mhm,
So allowing, I think one part is allowing your daughters to see that those other parts of you,
mhm,
that you're nurturing those other parts of you. So secondly, I think just really understanding that your daughter is at a different stage in her life and meeting her where she is,
mhm,
and really making an effort to approach things from a place of curious understanding, or curiosity. Questions
mhm.
should, unless it's a safety question, what I say is they should always be open-ended questions.
Mhm,
Okay, so avoiding the fix-it mode. So instead of saying, well, I think you should do this, right? Instead, just ask the open-ended question. So what are you thinking you're going to do? And allow your daughter to process and talk through that.
mhm,
And chances are, even though it may not be what you would have done yourself, you
mhm,
know, it's probably a pretty good idea. We can also learn from our kids, because I know
mhm.
I've learned a lot from my kids. I'm like,
Nice.
that's really efficient. I'm going to do that.
Mhm, mhm,
So, but so one thing about open-ended questions is that it also allows you to see where they are in their cognition,
mm,
because that allows you to be informed as to how you move forward
mhm,
in those conversations with them. So if they are thinking at a, at a, if they are 16 years old and they're thinking at a 16-year-old level, maybe, or close to that, um, don't come, but and you come back with an answer that you're making them feel like they're in kindergarten, they're going to
sure.
shut you down.
Yep.
So being able to meet them where they are with that, I think that's
Mhm.
really important.
Yeah. I was thinking if I can offer
Yeah,
something. I think sometimes
yeah,
we, as parents, like forget what it's like to be a teenager, or like we went through it. Like we're like, oh, I
yes,
remember, right? Like but to act, like first of all, it's different every
yeah,
time that a teenager is happening. It's in a different time, right? There's different
yes,
things happening. And so, although we've experienced it and we had similar, I mean, our biology has not changed that much, right? So,
right,
what happens within our bodies, same, right? Pretty same, pretty similar. But,
absolutely,
but in terms of societally or environmentally, it is different. And so, something I was thinking about is, I
yeah,
remember when I became a parent. So I had some friends that were parents before I was, right?
mm,
And then
mm,
but I remember when I became a parent and I had friends that weren't parents yet, and how that relationship changed, although it's still good, but it was different, right? And like having a newborn is so different. I mean, I don't know about you, but like thinking about going on a girls' night when you have a newborn, like to
oh,
me,
it's
I
right,
was
it's
like,
hard. It
I
can be
just want to
hard, yeah.
sleep, right? Like
Right.
I don't like, no, I don't want to, like, I don't want to get dressed up. Like that's way too much effort. Like
Yeah.
if you can come to
Mhm.
me and bring food to me, then please come. If you want to
Yeah.
hold my baby, please come, right? But if you want me to
Correct.
come to you, that's not going to be it. But then
It's
when we
too
get our
much,
kids to
yeah.
like, a little bit more independent, right? Like that 6 month
Mhm.
mark. I mean, for me, at least personally, that 6 month mark, the one
Yeah,
year mark, it's like, I want to go out and do stuff now. Like I know my kid can survive without me. So like, I'm okay. But I think the teenage years are kind of like that too, of like, this is a stage, right? Everything is just, it will pass. Right. So not
absolutely.
getting too fixated in that, and that like there's these new normals of like, okay, so it may not be like what it was when you and your daughter were 8, and you were your whatever age and she was 8. It's not going to be like that
Mhm.
because she's not 8 anymore and you're also not that age. So like, maybe you're not going to try out all the gymnastics moves now that she's 15 and you're 50. Right? You're like, no
Yes,
thanks, I'm good. But
yes,
it's okay that those things are changing, and yet we have to get
absolutely.
curious. So if a friend, because I had a baby, and with like my first versus my last, how I felt about those different pieces are going to be different. In like having a newborn the first time is not going to be how I felt about having a newborn the last time, because I had gained skills too. So I would want somebody to ask me, right? I want to be included in the decisions that are being made. So if my friends are going to go on a girls trip and they're like, "Oh, Bryce won't want to come because she just had a baby," or Bryce won't want to come because she's still breastfeeding, or whatever it is that they in their minds, like, meaning well
Mhm.
intentioned, but I want to
Yeah,
be part of that. So I think just remembering like the pieces of like maybe our more recent struggles that we've had, or somebody assuming we don't want a promotion at work and not even offering it to us, or being shocked when we applied or something, like feeling that way. Like our teenagers also feeling
mm,
that way about us too, of like, they
yes,
want to be included in this process. They don't want other people to make decisions for them. They want to make the
yeah,
decisions for themselves. They want an opportunity, and we're teaching them something and allowing them to voice
yes,
their opinion and thoughts, even if we don't like
yes,
it. They can say something and we can be
yes,
like, internally, like, I hate that idea. Like, I think that sounds
absolutely.
awful. Like, no, I do not want you to, whatever it is. Like, I don't want you to see that kid, or I don't want you to have this many piercings, or whatever it is that we're thinking, right? But it's about getting curious about our kids and what they're thinking and feeling. And we also, I mean, do you feel like there's a place for us to set rules and expectations even while parenting teens?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think, I mean, as parents, our number one job is to keep our kids safe.
Hmm.
And, I think that as they are learning the ways, because their brains are not fully developed and they don't have all the life experience we do,
Yeah.
it is important to provide some sort of containment for them,
Hmm.
where it starts to transition and, within teenage years, and is really giving them the opportunity to have a say and a buy-in into those consequences, or the rules, and even the consequences, right? Because what it does, it allows them to, you're also helping them exercise accountability. You're also helping them exercise a sense of self-discipline and control in that way, and doing it in a very intentional way. So, but also meeting them where they are. When I work with teen girls and their moms, but working with the adult daughters and their moms, I do see the other side, that if you don't allow your daughter to have that appropriate growth into her adolescence, right? Or you keep treating her like an 8-year old. Your daughter is 15 and, you're still talking to her and treating her like an 8-year old. Then it actually moves into the adulthood, where now you have a mother that does not have respect for the daughter's growth. The daughter has grown. She's had her own life experiences. She's done some awesome things with her life, but in her mind, in her mom's mind, she's still 17 years old, and she's got to treat her a certain way, and she's got to talk with her a certain way and direct her a certain way.
Hmm.
And at the same time, also too, sometimes the daughter then doesn't see the mother as a grown woman as well, who has also evolved over time.
Hmm.
So it does cause that conflict. So allowing that growth aspect between a mother and a daughter is an extremely important part of maintaining connection as well.
Yeah. What do you think about something that I think can be tricky is like moms as friends,
Mhm.
their daughter's friends, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
how, I mean, do you think is that the right perspective? Like what are your thoughts around that piece?
Yeah, I think that's wrong. I I stand by that 100%. You know, you are you are a parent to your daughter. You are, you know, it's I think it's important for parents to maintain that distinction. What you can become is a trusted consigliere, you know, where the daughter can come to you for advice
Mhm.
and you guys can have this, you know, these open conversations. But, you know, if you know, treat them as a friend, and I could see where, you know, where that could be, especially when you have a mom that came from a very dysfunctional background
Mhm.
and, you know, either it was abusive or very restrictive, and she's in her own way is trying to break her cycles with
Mhm.
her daughter. So but she ends up going to the extreme and ends up being very permissive, ends up, you know, allowing daughter to do things like, yeah, you know, you could bring your friends and you guys can drink in the house, and
Mhm.
or you know, whatever it is, just being very permissive in that way. It does blur the boundaries between mother and daughter. Now
Mhm.
the daughter sees the mother as a friend, which entails a whole different level of how you see a person. There's a
Mhm.
whole different level of how you interact with them, the type of respect you have for them, right? So, and then moms, then when their daughters are not listening to them, then get really angry. And then they go back to say, you can't talk to me like that because I'm your mother.
Mhm.
Uh, so it's very confusing for that teen girl.
Mhm.
Wait,
Mhm.
I thought you were my friend.
Yeah.
And so it becomes a very disjunctive thing. So I think always making sure that you do that parents stay in those parenting roles
Yeah.
is very important. Just
Mhm.
learning how to adjust and transition appropriately and evolve as their kids evolve and meeting them where they're at.
Right.
In that way, they maintain that connection. They don't necessarily become their friends, but they do become that trusted, like I said, just that trusted person they can go
Mhm.
to for
Mhm.
even the toughest advice around sex, around drugs, around, you know, or, you know, just, you know, our peer interactions.
Mhm.
So really that's the goal. But for us, for kids to be completely open, feel like they can be completely open to us, we don't need to be their friends.
Mhm. And I think that's what people are trying to accomplish. I think
Yeah,
it's well intentioned, right? Like if I'm their friend,
absolutely. Yeah,
then they're going to be able to share things with me and that means that we can trust each other and but I think kids want
yeah.
boundaries. Kids want roles. I mean, I
Mhm.
know that maybe that's not what they're saying to you, right? But they do
Right,
because then
right.
you know where the wall is, right? Like in life as adults, we have rules. So teaching them
Absolutely.
that there's not rules and then there are rules, that's very confusing. And so that is in opposition of what real adulthood is like. And our goal is to
Yeah,
train them up to be adults. And so thinking about that, but I think
yeah.
there's only one mom, right? Like
Mm. Mhm.
there's only so many roles for parents, right? But
Yeah,
there's plenty of space for friends, right? So you can't, I mean, I get that there is dynamics where step parents have been great parents, and I think that you can be a parent like that, like a mom like that, to be a stepmom and be a great mom in that role. But you're
mhm,
not going to find another mom. You know, my mom has died, and like I find other
mhm,
mentors, right, or like people that I say like I need mom advice from you, right, to have them turn on
mhm.
that within themselves,
Yeah,
but nobody else is going to be my mom. And so I
right.
think that role is so important and so cherished, and you're the only one who gets that, right? And so I think your daughter does want you to have that role, even when it's hard and she may be pushing back and in opposition of what you're
Right.
saying or doing. Again, don't take it personally. Like that doesn't mean change who you are, right? Like You're dating a
Exactly.
guy and he's like, actually, I like redheads. Like that doesn't mean you're going to dye your hair red, right? So like let's stay true to ourselves. Um, but I think that part, yeah, that's something that's hard, and I think it's well intentioned. But
It is.
your daughter does want you to be the mom, and then it helps to know what the expectations are. Like that does define respect, right? Like that does set consistency. I mean, and it also allows for communication, but it's about how we receive it too. I think when moms feel
Absolutely.
like their kids don't tell them things, oftentimes it's because of how we respond to our kids trying to communicate with us, because our
Yes.
kids do want to. My kids like to over communicate. I mean, I say there's no such thing, but sometimes I'm like, hmm, yeah, it's like I got it, right? Like
Right.
what
Right.
you're saying is, and so then I'm like, what I hear you saying is this, right? Did I get that right? Yes. Okay, then because sometimes I think they're saying it because they don't know that we get it, right? Like they're like, do you understand? And so we're priming them as young children for how we're going to listen. So I think also my advice is early, right? Like doing these skills not
Absolutely.
just in the teen years, but if our kids know that if there's a problem, or there's something that happens at school, or a terminology that they don't know what it means, or a situation where
Mhm.
they don't know how to solve, and they can come to you, and you don't say, oh, you can't hang out with Bryce now, like Bryce did that thing, you can't be around her anymore. But to be like, what do you think you're going to do about that, and let your daughter be the one to choose to not hang out with certain people, or
Yeah.
go to a certain party, right? Of like being like, I'm really proud of how you did that, right? Like giving those words of affirmation too is so important. Don't you think that that helps them?
Oh, yes, absolutely, absolutely. I think that that is really important. And even if, say, I know sometimes life happens too, and say that maybe you don't, there's, you're noting a problem with your 16-year-old daughter and you didn't have these conversations with your
Sure.
daughter.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you know, for me, I always tell parents it's never too late.
Mm-hmm.
As a matter of fact, I feel like adolescents, a lot of people feel like, oh, once they're teenagers, they're baked. They're set and they're, hard to, but it's really quite it's a very um, moldable time in their lives. Their
Mm-hmm.
brain and the way it's developing and, kind of all the the pruning of the nerve cells and the development of new ones, and it's all guided by their experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So, including our interactions with our moms,
Mm-hmm.
and so it's never too late to really heal that
Mm-hmm.
relationship and get the daughter to the right place. But yes, ideally, yes, we do. The earlier, the better, right? It is better for everybody. But
Yeah, but
I
sometimes
agree.
you
I agree.
recognize like, hey, this could be better now, and then
Right.
just do it now, right? Like don't
Right.
wait. Like I think now is better
Yeah.
than a
The
week
never.
or a
The
month from now. I never, yes, right, and just
right.
that part. So how do you think? Like, let's say that there's a mom listening to this, or mom's listening to this, and they're like, okay, my teen daughter and I haven't been doing things like this, and there's distance between us. How can we repair that? What can we do to start getting back on the best foot, or the page
Mm,
that we'd like to be on with them?
mhm, mhm. So, okay, what I do first and foremost is I, the work. I do a couple things. Okay, so by the time the mothers come with me with their teen daughters, I mean, there is a lot of conflict,
Yes.
and all you can see is the not so good about her. All I hear is she does this wrong, and she is doing this, and she's not supposed to be doing this. So,
Mhm.
what I encourage moms to do is to write a list of all their strengths,
Mm,
because what that does in that exercise, it allows them, the brain then starts to kind of shift a little bit
mhm.
and allows them to think differently of their daughter.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that is going to be important, as we said, teenagers want to be seen and heard. They're sponges for validation. And we
Yes.
want to make sure that, um, we don't want them to lean on too much validation, that external validation, but at the same time, it is okay too, because they need to know if they're doing things the right way or not.
Mhm.
So, and in doing that, you impart their strengths. I feel like kids become what we speak into them,
Mhm.
and that includes our daughter. So, if she is really courageous and um, she I don't know, just you impart it in this conversation. Wow, that was really courageous of you to do that.
Mhm.
How did you do that? Right? Like maybe she stood up to a friend or something. She might have shared that with mom. That
Mhm.
was really, really brave of you to do that. How did you do that?
Mhm.
How did you get to that place where you could do that?
Mhm.
So what this does, it also develops these parts of the brain that helps them start to see the world not so much in a very it helps them see the world in more than just a couple of dimensions, and
Yeah.
it helps them to see the world holistically.
Mhm.
So I say that. Number two is, actually, this is also number one, is starting to establish emotional safety with your daughter. As we talk about the hierarchy of needs, under us is the basic needs that we need, right, to feel that we can develop and reach self-actualization. But the next one is safety. So
Mhm.
if you don't have that safety, then you cannot have. It is really hard to reach those other stages,
Yes.
and the pinnacle is self-actualization. So try to make it safe for your daughter to have these conversations with you. So number one is really paying attention of how you talk with your daughter, being mindful rather than mindless.
Mhm.
And number two is learning how to control, your own emotions around your daughter. If
Mhm.
you're gonna, flip your head, with her, she's gonna see this is also an example of how she is. She will, she can regulate emotions. So really paying attention to that. Um, then really starting to come from a place of curiosity
Mhm.
and open-ended questions, and also to, I think, having these conversations, also knowing when to have them, I think are
Mhm.
really important. If your daughter is really angry, really upset in the moment, that is not the moment to give a lecture
Yeah.
or to say, I told you so,
Mhm.
or to say, well, this is how I would do it.
Mhm.
Because what you're basically saying to them in that moment, because they are not thinking with their prefrontal cortex and their executive functioning, they're only thinking with that threat response system, is this person is not listening to me. She's a threat and I'm going to respond appropriately.
Mhm.
So they either fight back or they'll run away or they'll freeze, right? Or they'll withdraw to the room,
Mhm.
so they'll shut down.
Mhm.
So really recognizing when you should talk, when you should say these things.
Mhm.
So, and
Could you
also
say something
to,
like, "Is
yeah,
this a good time to talk about this?" Like, is that because
yes,
sometimes it's hard to know if it's a good time.
absolutely. And also, yes, that is a great question to ask,
Mhm.
because it gives them control. It gives them, you're giving them autonomy in that moment. And also another question is, would you like, do you just need for me to listen to you or do you need
Mhm.
advice?
Mhm.
So,
Love that one. Mhm.
so it's either, and they probably could want both. They'll say, just listen to me for now. Okay.
Mhm.
Maybe,
Mhm.
or, or maybe right off the bat, they do need that advice. So if they say advice, then they're giving you permission
Mhm.
to have that conversation with them on an advice level, and they
Mhm.
can receive it much more productively. Um,
And you could say, like, even if they said, "I just want you to listen," and you're hearing something where you're like, "Oh my gosh, like, I really feel like I need to say, like, we're not going down the right path here, and I don't know how to redirect
yeah.
it." You can say, "Would it be okay if I know you asked for me to listen, and I respect that, but I'm hearing something that I feel like I really want to respond to. Would that be okay with you?" And they might say no, and that's the reality. And it's
Yes.
hard to accept that. I mean, I think this is non-safety factors, right? Like not something where it's like, look, you don't get a choice. I'm going to tell you what I think about this safety
Correct.
thing, right?
Correct.
But this is about decisions and relationships and friendships and those kind of things, or how they're going to handle something or address something with the teacher or whatever. And so I think they may not be ready for that then, and so then there might be another time, like, hey, I wanted to follow up on that conversation we had the other day. um,
Mhm.
I still feel really strongly about sharing this piece of advice, or where have you gotten on that? Because sometimes when we're in the heightened emotional state, I mean,
Yeah,
we're probably not coming up with the best solutions, right? We're more
absolutely.
reactive. And so versus like responding. And so sometimes we just need to go through that and listen to them. And they're like, and then I'm gonna, tell the teacher that they're the worst teacher in this entire school and whatever. And it's like, okay,
Yeah.
like you were really upset about this, right?
Yes.
So that's what you're validating is you're not saying like, yes, you should definitely tell the teacher they are the worst in this entire school, right? Like it's like, okay,
Yes.
this is super upsetting. This is like you were at level 10. Like this is really hard. Like what can I do to support
Mhm.
you? Right? Like
Mhm. Mhm.
because chances are they're probably not going to go and say something to the teacher. I mean, there might be some girls who would, but that's probably not going to be the thing. But in the moment, they just want you to understand like how upset they are. And so then by validating, like you are really upset, like this is really a bothersome thing to you.
Absolutely. Yeah, validating should be right up there as far as your first response. And really the default response should be just listen.
Mhm.
And, and unless it's something that where they are in the face of emotional safety, just listen.
Yeah.
And eventually they either in talking through it with you, they come up with their own solution, which is awesome,
Yeah.
right? You're giving them that sense of autonomy,
Hmm.
or they, will maybe, they may naturally just say, "What would you do, mom? I don't, I don't know what to do here." So
Hmm.
then they're giving you permission. What I love about this approach too is that I think oftentimes as women, we don't give ourselves permission to exercise boundaries.
Yeah.
This allows us the opportunity to show our girls that it's okay and it's appropriate and you need to exercise boundaries.
Hmm.
So I think that's a really important aspect of establishing safety as well.
Yeah.
And and even telling your daughter, it doesn't have to be in that moment, maybe like a day or two later, you could say, you know what, I really appreciated when you told me that, like in that moment, you didn't need my advice. And And so I want you to know that that was okay with me, and I'm really proud of you for exercising that boundary.
Hmm.
And so really just making it a point where it becomes concrete with them, because chances are they may not know that they're doing that.
Hmm.
But if we are able to bring it to the forefront of their mind
Hmm.
and say, what you were doing is exercising a boundary, and how awesome is that?
Yeah.
So it gets them into a place and it starts to put them in a space where they are okay with themselves
Hmm.
in exercising boundaries,
Yeah.
which I think is important for a woman. And we don't sometimes allow ourselves to do that, or we're not, or we when we enforce them, sometimes they're totally ignored. So
Hmm.
it's almost like we have to fight harder for a boundary sometimes.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Well, and then that builds confidence and self-esteem and resilience, right? Like all these things
absolutely.
that we want in our children, but especially in our daughters, is like we want them to know that their voice matters, because there's going to be times where they need to exercise their voice, just like you said, that like setting boundaries is so important, and that we
Yes.
want them to know that like people, like your no means no, your
Yes.
yes means yes, right? Like, and that you have the right to do that. And so by us honoring when they set boundaries with us too, saying like, you really don't want me to do that, and I'm going to accept like you said no. So, you whatever the thing is, right? Like I think that's important too, is
Hmm.
just like telling
Hmm.
them that their voice matters, because oftentimes I see women too who feel like their voice has been so silenced, that they stop voicing. And that's, I mean,
Absolutely.
I mean, we still have the thoughts, we just won't put words to it.
Oh, absolutely. And that leads into a whole other spectrum of things like people pleasing
Yes.
that women, sometimes oftentimes fall into, right? They or just to or keeping the peace for the sake of or not saying anything for the sake of keeping peace and adopting the good girl mentality, whatever that means.
Yeah.
But in their realm, it would be don't say anything, don't cause any trouble, don't be high maintenance. Um, you know, So agreeable is the standard.
Yeah.
And that's not healthy. Yeah,
Let's push
that's
really hard against that. Yes.
right. And that's not healthy for girls. So, but teaching them too on how to do that in a productive way where they can use their voice in a productive way. Can they use their voice by shouting and screaming and, just like flipping off the world? Probably not the best way. So really, it's the opportunity to show them how to use that voice productively so that they can be heard and they can be seen and they can feel that pride in themselves that and feel that permission to use their voice.
Yeah. Okay, so I think as we conclude this amazing interview, like I've just loved every moment of this conversation. Like, let's talk to the moms for a minute who are, struggling, right? And they're feeling like kind of like, okay, I don't know that things can get better. Like they're so bad with my daughter. Like what hope do you have to offer to those moms?
Yeah. So the hope that I have is that number one, parenting is hard. I mean, it's hard stuff. There's no such thing as being a perfect parent. And I know sometimes, there's societal messages and things that you see and then people telling you how to be perfect, but there's really no such thing as a perfect parent. We're all going to mess up at some point. Right. And number two, it's never too late. I promise I have worked with girls that were 16 and 17 had broken relationships with their moms and, me helping them guide them through, they were able to really repair that relationship in a very healthy way. So it's never too late. And even if it, just lets linger until adulthood, it's never too late. Yeah. So, it's just a matter of just seeking that help and knowing too that, parenthood is not meant to be done alone. And sometimes, as much as our society values autonomy and individuation and things like that, there are moments that it's important to acknowledge that we need to lean on our support system if it's healthy. We need to lean on others for help, and that's okay. Yeah. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for this. This has been amazing, Erica.
Thanks, Bryce. I really, really enjoyed this conversation. So thank you so much for having me.
Thanks again, Erica, for this incredibly valuable conversation. I'm so glad that you joined us today to share your wealth of knowledge around mother-daughter relationships and how to successfully navigate these teen years with our daughters. With that, I will say, please take a moment to subscribe to our show. And also, if you think that somebody else in their mother-daughter relationship could benefit from this conversation, please share this episode with them. I'll ask that you follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and also keep the emails coming with future topic suggestions to accidental experts at gmail.com. Have a lovely day. Some words from our legal team.
The information presented in this podcast is not intended or implied to be a substitute for appropriate professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. All content, including text, graphics, images, and information contained on or available through this podcast, is for general information purposes only. This podcast makes no representations and assumes no responsibility for the accuracy or information on or available through this podcast, and such information is subject to change without notice. You are encouraged to confirm any information obtained through this program with other sources and review all information regarding any condition or treatment with the appropriate professionals.
What we're saying is, yes, I am a real therapist, but I'm not your therapist.